All right, let's do more on dating apps because a lot of men are stuck in a loop that they don't even realize they're in. Online dating advice usually falls into the two extremes. Either dating apps are amazing and you just need to optimize harder, or dating apps are evil and rigged and pointless and you should delete them immediately. Both of those takes, in my opinion, are lazy. The real question isn't whether dating apps work in general. The real question is when they are a waste of your time. Because for a lot of men, dating apps aren't failing dramatically, they're failing quietly. They drain energy, attention, and confidence without producing much of anything in return. So let's talk about when dating apps stop being useful and start becoming a time sink. Dating apps are supposed to be an introduction tool. That's it, that's all they are. A way to meet women you wouldn't otherwise meet, which is obviously a great thing. You can meet so many women that you normally wouldn't even meet in a lifetime. And dating apps, they become a waste of time when they turn into the entire dating strategy. There should be more than just online dating. So if most of your dating effort consists of swiping, tweaking apps, checking matches, and waiting for responses, to be honest, you're no longer dating or no longer in dating territory. You're basically managing a dashboard. That's what you're really doing. And the problem with that is simple. Dating apps are terrible at converting attention into actual connection. They really are. You can spend hours swiping and chatting and feel productive, feel like you're doing the right thing, feel like you're actually making a dent into your dating life. But nothing in your real life changes. No dates, no momentum, no emotional feedback, just activity. And that activity usually is just some swiping, not even chats and getting good matches. So at that point, the app isn't really helping you meet women, it's just keeping you busy. And dating apps work very differently depending on where you live. I said this before. If you're in a dense city with a lot of active women, apps can function reasonably well as a supplement to real life. Let me repeat that, as a supplement to real life. If you're in a smaller town, for instance, like myself, a suburban area, or just a place where most people your age range are already settled or not using the apps, then apps really become repetitive very quickly and boring and they don't do much for you. You start seeing the same profiles, the same people, the same low intent matches, or eventually you get this message you're all out of profiles. You've seen every woman there is on the app. At that point, more time on the app doesn't really increase your chances. It just increases your exposure to the same limited pool that already hasn't swiped yes on you. Now, men often interpreted this as a personal failure, which it really isn't. When it's really just a geography thing, really, that's what it really is. So if the pool is shallow, then swimming harder doesn't really help. It doesn't get you anywhere. And some men are, well, let's be honest, good looking, instant clickety click guys. They look good on screen, they come across immediately, they benefit from fast decisions. And well, other men don't. Most men don't. And that's where the whole the chats and the Tyrones and only the top 5%, top 10% of the guys get any action. That's what this means. So you got to make sure that you are this instant, well, clickety click guy that women want to swipe yes on. So you got to have this certain a specific profile. But that often also means that you have to display something or someone that you really aren't. Now, some men shine in conversation, myself for instance, and presence, and humor, and warmth, and steadiness, and how they make someone feel over time, which are extremely important qualities. They are far more interesting, far more important than looking good on screen. Those qualities matter a lot in a relationship, but they don't show up in a swipe. So if you're the second type of guy, which, let's be honest, most of us men are that guy, are those type of guys. That's just what it is. I mean, we're all guys, and generally speaking, we're all the same. Let's be real here. And dating apps will filter you early. You will get swiped out to the no side very quickly. Not because you're a bad option, I've said this before, but it's because the system doesn't wait long enough to, you know, display your value or give you, the chance to display your value. And let's be honest, those qualities are very difficult to display in an online profile. And in that case, apps become once again a waste of time because they consistently eliminate you before you ever get a chance to compete properly. You're not even in the game, you're benched from the get go. And that's not a mindset issue. Once again, we're talking about a medium mismatch. And like I said before, once again, dating apps are a front load, imagination. You see photos, you read bios, you build an idea, a fantasy of someone before you ever meet them. And very often that imagined version is, well, better than reality, you know, better than reality can compete with. And this creates this weird dynamic where women go on dates, already comparing the real person in front of them to the version that never existed, which is the profile. And the profiles aren't real. I'm talking about my own experiences, even for the women. You see these profiles and you say, "Oh wow, this woman must be so and so," and then you meet them in real life, and it's like, "Wow, you're nothing like your profile, not even close." And when that happens over and over again, dating starts to feel disappointing. And, you know, even when nothing is actually wrong, but I can testify to this, it feels disappointing, it feels frustrating, and you're thinking to yourself, like, what the hell am I doing? Why are all these women on the profiles not the women I meet in real life? They aren't the same. And women do the same thing for us guys. They look at your profile and they make up this image of you, and then you go on a date, but you have to you're being compared to this online version of yourself, which is usually the most amazing version, and you can't compete in real life. And yeah, that is an issue. That is a problem. And for men, this often shows up as confusion. Like on paper, they should have worked, but it went nowhere. What is going on here? And at that point, the app isn't helping you connect, it's distorting expectations. And anything that consistently raises expectations without improving the outcomes is a bad investment. And here's another important thing: dating apps make it very easy to feel like you're doing, something wrong, quote unquote, doing something wrong. They're very good at that without actually taking any social risk, right? So dating apps make it very easy to feel like you're doing something wrong without actually, taking any social risk. That's what it is, right? So swiping feels safer than approaching. It does. Messaging feels way safer than asking a woman out. Waiting for matches feels safer than putting yourself in situations where attraction can actually develop or you might get rejected in real life. If you notice that apps are replacing real world effort rather than supplementing it, they've become a crutch. At that point, they don't just waste time, they delay growth. You have to get out there. I said it before, I'll say it again in the future. You can't only rely on dating apps, especially if you're that normal, steady, quality, grounded guy. You have to go out in the real world and, talk to women. Unfortunately, that is what you have to do. Unless you're this 10 out of 10, amazing specimen of a guy, then, well, you could maybe rely only on dating apps. But most of us can't. And another thing is if they they waste your time if they quietly damage your mood over time or instantly. And this is a thing that I think doesn't get talked about enough. Low matches, slow replies, ghosting, and the ambiguity of all it will add up. Even if you tell yourself not to take it personally, eventually you kinda will. It's these repeated micro rejections and they affect how you feel. We're not robots, we are humans and it will affect you eventually. It will stack up. So if you notice that using dating apps leaves you more irritated, more cynical, more bitter, doubtful, and negative about dating and negative about women, and believing all this crap online, how terrible women are, and such, then regardless of whether the apps, quote unquote, work in theory, they're not working for you. And that's the whole point. Are they working for you, not in general? Anything that consistently puts you in a worse mental state is costing you more than it's giving you back. So, when are dating apps not a waste of time? Well, to be fair, dating apps aren't useless for everyone. I can testify to that. I mean, they can work, sure, if you live in a dense area, if you treat them as a side tool, not your main plan to get a woman. If you move in the real world and, if you have some interactions in the real world. If you don't interpret, there we go, if you don't overinterpret results, if you don't let it, touch your self-worth, your own value, and if you don't let it replace actual social exposure, like I said, you have to get in the real world. So, used lightly and strategically, they can introduce you to women you'd never meet otherwise, which is, well, an upside, I would say. But used heavily and emotionally, they can become a serious drain. So, where does this leave us as guys? Well, putting it together, dating apps are a waste of time when they replace real dating and they keep you passive and they filter out your strengths early on, so you have to rely on all your weaknesses, which means you will be losing if they distort your expectations or if they constantly worsen your mood. That's basically, the summation of what is going on. If that is the case, then dating apps probably aren't worth the effort or the, value they propose. It's, you know, it's that you're trying to get real world outcomes from a system optimized for screen based interaction. So there we go. Dating apps aren't a verdict on your desirability. It just isn't. No matter what social media and whatever all these online dudes are talking about, it's not. Dating apps, it's not real life. It's just a tool. They aren't a verdict on your desirability. I promise you there are more women interested in you than you think. And dating apps are not a requirement for finding a relationship. They aren't. But you have to get out and talk to women. Eventually, a woman will say yes to you when you ask her out. And eventually, a woman will say yes to a relationship with you. Or she'll even ask. Dating apps are just one of the many tools we have. And like any tool, they're only useful in the right context. So you have to use them right. And a lot of us guys were using it wrong. So if you're putting in time and getting nothing back, that's not weakness. That's just information. It means this system isn't working for you, or the way you set up the system within dating apps is not working for you. And sometimes the smartest move isn't to optimize harder, it's to stop using a tool that isn't built for what you're trying to build, for what you're trying to do. That's what it is. So I hope this was useful to you. I hope you can, well, use it in your own life, in your own dating life. And I'll talk to you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye bye.